Hello, everyone. Today we are going to leave the surface of the Earth behind. We are going to step away from factory floors, office cubicles, and server rooms, and look up at the stars. I'm going to tell you a story about the absolute, unforgiving laws of astrophysics, and how the massive ego of a marketing executive turned humanity's most advanced piece of orbital technology into the most expensive firework in the history of the solar system. I am a lead orbital mechanics engineer at a massive, global aerospace telecommunications company. My workplace is Mission Control. Imagine a huge, dark, amphitheater-style room filled with glowing screens, massive digital maps of the Earth, and rows of engineers talking in hushed, clinical voices. We monitor and fly a fleet of commercial satellites. Our crown jewel was Helios 9. It was a flagship, state-of-the-art communications satellite, roughly the size of a school bus, valued at $1.2 billion. Flying a satellite isn't like flying an airplane. In space, there is no air friction, but there is gravity. To keep Helios 9 in a stable orbit, we rely on a very limited supply of xenon gas for its ion thrusters. We use tiny microscopic bursts of this gas to make minute course corrections over its intended 15-year lifespan. In orbital mechanics, any major movement requires something called delta V, a change in velocity. If you use up your delta V, your satellite becomes a dead, floating brick. But a year ago, the corporate board hired Chad as the new vice president of global monetization. Chad came from the world of smartphone marketing. He sold data plans and viral marketing campaigns. To him, a satellite was just a glorified Wi-Fi router floating in the sky. He had absolutely no concept of Keplerian physics, and he thought that moving a one-ton object in space was as easy as driving an Uber to a different neighborhood. The month of September approached, and with it, the highly anticipated Global Tech Summit. It was an exclusive, invite-only event for tech billionaires, celebrities, and politicians, hosted on a remote, private island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Our company was the main sponsor, and Chad wanted to use the event to show off our network capabilities. That Tuesday morning, Chad strutted into Mission Control, wearing an expensive tailored suit, holding his tablet, and looking completely out of place among the engineers. "Orbital lead," he called out, standing behind my console and pointing at the giant telemetry map on the wall. "I've been looking at the coverage maps for the tech summit on the island next week. The internet speeds we are providing are standard. That's not good enough. I want zero latency. I want the billionaires to stream 8K video from their yachts without a millisecond of buffer. I need you to take Helios 9 and move it from its high orbit down into a low Earth orbit, positioned directly over the island. I want it hovering right above their heads for the entire 48-hour event." I stopped typing. I slowly turned my chair around to look at him, feeling an icy chill run through my veins that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "Chad, that is orbital suicide," I explained in a very calm, deep, and serious tone, trying to make him grasp the gravity of the situation. Helios 9 is in a stable, high-altitude orbit. To drastically lower its altitude and change its inclination to hover over a specific island requires a massive delta V burn. We would have to fire the main thrusters continuously. It will consume 95% of the satellite's 15-year fuel supply in a single day. And worse, if you lower it to the altitude you are asking for, it will enter the exosphere. There is atmospheric drag down there. Without fuel to boost it back up, atmospheric friction will grab the satellite, drag it down, and it will burn up upon re-entry. You will destroy a $1.2 billion asset for a 2-day party. Chad let out a loud, obnoxious sigh, rolling his eyes as if I were a stubborn child refusing to do my homework. "Oh, give me a break. You engineers are all the same, hiding behind your math so you don't have to innovate," he sneered, leaning over my console. "It's just empty space. There is no air up there, so stop making up excuses about drag. The CEO wants maximum impact at this summit. I am not going to let a bunch of nerds in a dark room ruin the biggest PR stunt of my career just because you want to save some gas. This is a direct order from the vice president. Either you program that orbital drop right now, or I'll have security drag you out of this building, fire you for gross insubordination, and find someone who actually knows how to use a joystick." Any aerospace engineer knows that the laws of physics do not care about your marketing strategy. I knew with absolute certainty that gravity was going to tear his precious PR stunt to pieces. But since my career and my security clearance were on the line, I retreated behind the ultimate shield of the aerospace industry, the unalterable flight command log. "I absolutely refuse to deorbit a billion-dollar spacecraft under my responsibility, Chad," I replied with absolute, robotic coldness. "But since you possess executive override authority, you will execute the command yourself." I swiveled my monitor toward him. "You will log in with your biometric thumbprint. You will draft a manual flight command ordering the extreme Delta V orbital drop into the exosphere. You will explicitly write that you formally reject my technical warning regarding fuel depletion, atmospheric drag, and the catastrophic re-entry of the spacecraft. And you will digitally sign that you assume, personally, legally, and financially, full responsibility for the total loss of the Helios 9 satellite. Chad scoffed. If this pathetic bureaucratic theater makes you feel better, I'll sign it. You are terrified of success, he mocked. He pressed his thumb to the scanner, typed out the override command, and authorized the burn. There. Now push the button and bring that satellite down. I complied with his order. I hit the execution key. On the giant screen, the telemetry lines turned red. The thrusters ignited in the vacuum of space. The multi-billion-dollar countdown to destruction had officially begun. Over the next few days, Helios 9 executed the massive burn. On our screens, we watched the fuel gauge drop from 98% to a terrifying 4%. The satellite plunged from its safe, high-altitude sanctuary down into low Earth orbit, settling precisely over the remote Pacific island just as the Global Tech Summit began. On Friday night, the event was in full swing. Chad was in the VIP area of the island, texting me from his yacht. He was euphoric. The 5G internet speeds were off the charts. He was showing off to billionaires and investors, proving that our company could provide zero-latency internet anywhere on the globe. But back in Mission Control, the room was dead silent. We were watching the inevitable physics of atmospheric drag take over. At that extremely low altitude, space isn't entirely empty. There are microscopic particles of atmosphere. When a school bus-sized object hits those particles at 17,000 miles per hour, it creates friction. On Saturday evening, right during the CEO's highly anticipated keynote speech on the island, the alarms in Mission Control began to howl. The red strobe lights bathed the room in a bloody glow. Orbital decay detected, the automated system announced. Helios 9 had run out of fuel. It couldn't fire its thrusters to push back against the drag. Gravity had hooked its claws into the one-ton machine, and it was pulling it down fast. I sat back in my chair, watching the altitude numbers plummet. Over the Pacific Ocean, the billionaires at the summit looked up at the night sky. Right above their heads, the $1.2 billion Helios 9 satellite hit the thicker layers of the Earth's atmosphere. At 17,000 miles per hour, the friction generated thousands of degrees of heat. The solar panels were ripped off instantly. The titanium chassis ignited. The sky over the VIP party was suddenly illuminated by a blinding, fiery streak of orange and green plasma. It looked like a massive, terrifying meteor tearing through the atmosphere. The satellite broke into thousands of burning pieces, creating an apocalyptic light show right above the heads of the richest people on Earth. And then, the internet on the island cut out completely. Absolute, permanent dead silence. Chad's PR stunt had literally gone up in flames. The entire tech summit was plunged into digital darkness, isolated in the middle of the ocean. The next morning, the atmosphere in Mission Control was lethal. The CEO, who had to be evacuated from the island by helicopter, stormed into our facility accompanied by corporate lawyers and federal aviation officials. His face was purple with rage. Chad, who had flown back on the same helicopter, was hyperventilating, his expensive suit wrinkled and soaked in sweat. He attempted the most desperate, cowardly maneuver possible to save his skin. It was the engineering team. Chad screamed hysterically, pointing a shaking finger at me in front of the CEO. They calculated the trajectory wrong. The orbital lead crashed the satellite on purpose. I just asked for better coverage, and he steered it into the atmosphere. The CEO looked at me, his eyes burning with a silent, terrifying fury. I didn't flinch. I calmly opened the flight control terminal, connected it to the main projector, and displayed the unalterable server log. There was the proof of his execution. Massive glowing letters projected in front of the furious executives. I order the extreme Delta V orbital drop into the exosphere to provide maximum signal coverage for the Tech Summit. I formally reject the lead engineer's technical warning regarding fuel depletion, atmospheric drag, and the catastrophic re-entry of the spacecraft. I assume, personally, legally, and financially, full responsibility for the total loss of the Helios 9 satellite. And right below it, Chad's unalterable biometric thumbprint signature, Vice President of Monetization. The CEO read the screen. The silence in Mission Control was so profound you could hear the hum of the computers. "Chad," the CEO whispered, his voice shaking with a rage so deep it chilled the room. "You ignored the absolute laws of astrophysics out of the pure arrogance of believing a satellite is a toy for your marketing stunts. You have burned $1.2 billion in the atmosphere and humiliated us in front of the entire tech industry. You are fired immediately." The CEO turned to the corporate lawyers. Open a civil and criminal lawsuit for gross negligence and destruction of corporate assets. I want you to freeze his accounts, seize his properties, and destroy his life. He is going to pay for every single bolt of that satellite. Security dragged Chad out of mission control. He was sobbing uncontrollably, his career evaporated, facing $1 billion debt he could never repay. It took us a year to launch a replacement satellite. I was promoted to Director of Orbital Operations. And nowadays I can assure you, if I tell an executive that moving a satellite even 1 millimeter uses too much fuel, absolutely no one dares to question my math. If you liked it, hit the like button and subscribe for more.